The trilateral talks between the US, Iran and Pakistan are stretching late into the night in the capital Islamabad. Negotiations now entering a third stage. Well, the Strait of Hormuz remains among the main sticking points. Iran's state media reports the current round is the last opportunity to reach a framework. Well, ahead of the talks, Tehran set preconditions, including the release of billions of dollars in frozen Iranian assets and an end to Israeli attacks on Lebanon. They're also demanding control of the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran's delegation is led by Speaker of Parliament Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. The talks in Islamabad are the highest level negotiations between Washington and Tehran since Iran's Islamic Revolution in 1979. Vice President J.D. Vance is leading the U.S. team. Washington wants the Strait of Hormuz to be fully opened without limitation. Before the negotiations, the U.S. said it's open to significant sanctions relief, but only in exchange for Iranian concessions on nuclear development. These negotiations come after Israel and the U.S. launched attacks on Iran 6 weeks ago. More than 3,000 Iranians have been killed and at least 26,500 people injured since the start of the war. Israeli and American attacks have also struck multiple civilian facilities, including hospitals, universities and schools. And the conflict also had widespread effects across the world. Al Jazeera's Osama bin Javaid is in the Pakistani capital near the venue of the talks. Osama, we're hearing that talks have now entered a critical phase. What does that mean?
Well, we'll have to wait and see when these talks actually end to see what that critical phase is. What we can tell you is that these talks have entered the 8th hour. This is probably the longest negotiation that has been spearheaded by the U.S. Vice President, who's leading the American side, and Bagher Ghalibaf, who is leading the Iranian side. As you mentioned, there are a number of issues which are at play. The Iranians, before arriving here, said the assets need to be unfrozen and they need to be a mechanism, a setup to ensure that Iran will be able to carry on with its activities when it comes to the various issues that they've been asking for. So what we're hearing from the Pakistani side is that they're still pushing for more flexibility from both sides. There has been progress, according to the sources who we've been speaking to in the room. In the last few hours, there are multiple planes which have landed in Pakistan coming from Iran. It is still unclear who are the passengers on those planes. There's a lot of speculation about who could possibly be there. We've heard from the U.S. media that there is going to be multiple avenues. There's going to be talks about the security issues. There's going to be diplomacy at play, and obviously economy. And one other issue there, which has been reported from Washington, is the release of prisoners. So we're hearing that there are confidence-building measures that the Pakistanis are trying to build on. As you mentioned, this is the third round, a critical phase, as sources are telling us. But there seems to be a lack of flexibility, especially coming from the Iranian sources, from the American side. That's what the Iranian sources are saying, that they're willing to budge on a few things, but the demands that they're hearing, especially on the Strait of Hormuz, are maximalist. And that is where we are. The state of play is that after all of this, what you do not want to see is a return to escalation. And the Pakistani sources are quite hopeful that this is going to result in something. What that looks like, would that be an extension of the ceasefire, an extension of the free movement of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, or something more substantive about the nuclear program, still remains to be seen. I was speaking to a diplomat just a few hours ago, and they told me that the best of diplomacy is run behind closed doors, and if diplomacy is done on headlines, well, it is very unlikely to succeed.
Osama, what is the bottom line here? Are these talks going into a second day? I think our correspondent earlier confirmed from the Iranian side that's what they're planning. Any confirmation from the U.S. side? And will the full U.S. delegation be sticking around?
Well, it is a wait-and-see game. We've heard from the Iranian side that they are going to be spending the night here in Islamabad. We've heard from Pakistani sources that there is going to be a continuation of these talks, especially on the experts and delegate level going forward after today. How long would that be? Which format will that take is still unclear. But what we have seen is a historic development where after 1979, this is the first time after multiple rounds, whether it was Geneva or Vienna or Oman or Abu Dhabi, they have been finally able to break the ice and sit in front of each other. What Iranian sources are telling us that it is a different set of players in the equation, whether it's the IRGC or the Supreme Leader, and they are now hoping that there's some room to maneuver. What will that actually look like? It is a wait-and-see game. After 8 hours, there's drip information that is coming out from sources, but anything substantive, because it's so speculative and sensitive, and there's a gag order on Pakistani politicians to speak about anything, so there is no shadow that is cast by the hosts. So we'll have to wait and see, and we're expecting that there could be a news conference from the Serena Hotel where these talks are still ongoing.
That's Osama bin Javaid reporting to us from Islamabad, where those talks are happening.